Today I'm joined with Jared Slomack, who is a very accomplished digital leader who has built and scaled some of the most innovative commerce operations in the industry. Jared is currently managing director at BairesDev, where he drives outcome-based solutions across diverse industry verticals. And he has over 2 amazing decades in digital transformation, and his impressive background, which I'd love for him to just get into a little bit, includes founding and selling a tech company, looking after some really, really cool stuff at Vodafone in Germany, and also leading Capgemini's digital transformation practice. With that, I would just love for you, Jared, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you're doing today.
Sure. So I've been in the industry about 24 years. I'm a recovering engineer, as they say, and essentially shifted my career very early on when I realized that the things that the business was asking technology to deliver weren't always aligned. So that really sort of started me in a direction of working between both business and technology to understand what are outcomes that the business needs to achieve and how can we embrace the realities of the current technology and data landscape to actually achieve those goals. So, what the famous term is, try to find that 20% of capability that gives us the 80% of value instead of just delivering for the sake of delivering. I've been doing that, ever since I started my company. Like Tim says, I worked at CGI. I worked leading their e-business solutions division in Central Europe. I came to America, worked at Capgemini, leading digital transformation there, our practice. And now I focus on sort of small boutique, or work at a small boutique agency where we really focus on bringing the top talent together in order to achieve these goals. So, for me, everything is about being outcomes oriented instead of just saying what is the product and shipping that product.
That's awesome, and really that's where that's what's so valuable to everybody today. I mean that's what really is. And as we sort of think of the evolution of omnichannel strategy, I mean you and I have both led digital transformations at some pretty awesome companies and developed very robust full funnel orchestrated omnichannel marketing. How do you see, and you've got some really awesome insights into this, how do you see that integration between physical and digital retail evolving? And, given the fact that 75% of all commerce is still done out at brick and mortar, what do you think the key omnichannel strategies are the brands should be prioritizing today?
Well, it's funny. So that you bring this up because that's been the common thread throughout my career for the last 25 years or so, 24 years. And, it used to be called multi-channel, then cross-channel, then omni-channel. But, companies have always struggled to do this. And I would say that, my 4 or 5 points that I have not changed throughout throughout all this time, because it's really simple, right? At the end of the day, you need to do two things in general, right? One is to make shopping and interactions as seamless and optimized as possible for your customers. That's the first thing. And the second thing is it's how do you set up a framework, and just to be completely frank, to be able to, let's say, pull that customer lever, those micro levers when they're available, right? So when they're in need. So for instance, somebody had a really difficult day, at work, and they were planning on cooking for their family, and they're at a stoplight just thinking, my God, I don't really, cooking is the last thing I want to do. I'd rather order pizza, for instance, just as an example. And the thing is that you have that sort of micro moment right there, right? They're at a stoplight right there. If they get home, it'll be too late because it'll be quicker to just cook pasta than wait for the delivery driver. So the thing is that you got to look at how do we drive and interact with those micro moments at the time, because at that stoplight you have 45 seconds before that light turns green and they're on their way, maybe on the highway, and it's too late. So in order to do those two things, it's seamless journey design, and that means being just channel agnostic experience. And when I say that, it's not just traditional channels. It's got to be, yes, desktop, yes, app, but also think about other ways. One of the ways we solved for the problem I just talked about was we created order with an emoji, right? We made ordering so
I
easy.
love
So now
this.
all of a sudden text messaging,
Yeah.
text messaging becomes a new channel, right? So when we say channel agnostic, it's really any way that a customer can communicate with you, right? You also want to optimize your in-store tech. The thing is that what's incredible to me is that it's been so many years since beacons and digital kiosks and interactive displays have been on the market, but seeing them actually interacted together with the app and all these other things. As an example, I was just in Home Depot the other day. They have beacons, they have interactive tech, and I was looking for a part, but I had to actually hunt down an orange vested person for help when really they could have. I opened the app and I was in the app looking for things, and they even have a store view, but it wasn't giving me information that they otherwise could have done. I think that was a huge miss. my clients are still struggling to deliver that, which then drives me to contextual personalization, constantly using location, browse history, and messaging to tailor those in-store experiences. So for instance, when the beacon now sees I'm in front of brass plumbing fittings and it knows that I bought, for instance, a pot filler from them maybe a month ago, it probably can assume I might be trying to install that. Why not use AI to then push me, and I'm sure we'll get into AI later, but to push me sort of more personalized, that thing you bought, that pot filler you bought needs a half-inch NPT fitting, I would look at X, Y, or Z. The next thing and the last thing is, fulfillment as a differentiator. Like we all talk about like buy online, pick up in store, curbside delivery. It's at one point it's table stakes. Like those things are all table stakes. But for instance, the more that you have, right, and that you don't just say, okay, we're doing buy online, pick up in store and curbside, and you it's a channel that you pick one or the other. You don't give people flexibility because they might pull up to the store. It got to be more flexible about that. Because for instance, I might say, you know what, I don't need to wait for them to come and put it in my car, but I have a screaming baby when I arrive there. I don't want to go into the store. I'd rather just stay in the car. So you really got to do that. So when you look at, sort of put a bow around this, when I look at the focus areas for my clients, a lot of them is, continuing investing in unified commerce platforms, headless CMS, modern PIMs, leveraging AI-driven supply chain for visibility, so people actually know how long it's going to take. And I think with the tariffs and the delays that we're going to have in goods, that's going to become even more important. And, really experimenting more in AR, because I think that augmented reality, it ran up the hype cycle, and before
Exactly.
it was able to really show any usable, the hype was so high, it was driven to so big amounts, it disappointed so many people that we've abandoned it. I think there
Yeah.
is a place for it, but research needs to be further conducted on that.
So, you mentioned the hype cycle, and it happens with every single one of the sort of innovations that we've watched over the last, 20, 30 years in the space. You get this white hot sort of noise, and it gets real buzzy in the press. Then, what I've seen that have happened, you have leadership in big companies get this, irrational exuberance that all of a sudden you're going to AR something or AI something, and overnight your P&L is just going to just magically just get better. And if I'm hearing you well, what you're saying is, right now, with the Home Depot example, I'm not picking on them, but really, I think it's most big brands. They're realizing that we're on the backside of the hype cycle, and now we as an industry need to say, all right, what are we going to do with this, and how's it going to actually help my business rather than just looking really nice on a PowerPoint somewhere.
No, absolutely. One of the, to really, again, boil it down, and this is sort of like my mantra, the foundation of everything I do. Yes, the hype cycle is the antithesis of what I try to do. Because the thing is that yes, these things are all sexy and exciting, but it's always about what is the outcome you're looking to drive. I give you another example, right? So I had a client that was like, we want a new app. And I said, great, we can make you a new app and so forth. And they gave me a whole list of things they wanted it to do. And I said, great, we could do all of that. And all of their style guides and experience things and mock-ups and build that. And I was great, we can build this. But what are you looking to achieve? Oh, well, we want to sell more stuff. I said, okay, how much more stuff? And they're like, as much as we can. I'm like, well, but that's not an outcome. Like I can't
Yeah,
measure against that. If I sell
yeah,
one more widget, great, I've achieved the outcome. But what do you want to do? Well, we want to become, eventually, and it took many rounds for me to do this, to get them to say, well, we want to become the number one company that sells this thing, right? And again, I can't really talk about the case study
yeah,
using the name of the brand, but regardless. And I said, okay, well, now I have something to go on. So with that as my foundation, I then take that and I break it down into what are the individual KPIs that ladder up to that main objective of selling more things, right? Or becoming the number one leader in this product. I say, who is the current leader? They sell 1 million widgets. We need to sell 1,000,001. That's our goal. And how do we move backwards from that? Now, when you move backwards and you say, okay, I need to get this many more visitors to my site. I need to get that much better conversion. I need to do this. I need to get this much better recommendation. And once you're able to do that and break it down into its component parts, you're then able to say, okay, these are the strategies or the experiences that I need to light up in order to enable that. And then for each one of those strategy points or experience points, you're able to put a KPI behind that and then grade yourself, not grades that make you feel better there and pat yourself on the back, but grades that actually help you achieve that outcome. And when something doesn't perform, because now you have all of these things that ladder up to your main objective, you can turn the screws a little bit and make improvements. So, to answer your question, or to further that, it's more about aligning everything you do to that master outcome and working backwards. And then that's how you decide what your strategy is, not just copying what everybody else is doing. I mean, those things will inform your decisions and inform the things you need to do, but just copying one for one is not the same. I'll give you a great example. I've had Colgate-Palmolive and Procter& Gamble as clients, similar companies selling similar products, just different brands. But yet when I tried to do one thing that I did at the other company, it totally fell flat. Why? Different technology, different data, different culture, different brand promises. And the thing is that what we realized is that after that failure, this was much earlier on in my career, we went back and we said, okay, well, why did this not work here? And what we realized is we didn't look at those things. We didn't ladder from the top down and then figure out, okay, how does everything align? We just copied one for one. And of course it wasn't going to work.
You and I are both really big culture guys. To me, and look, we both live in technology and we've been doing this for a while. So much of this just begins, middles, and ends with the culture and the implementation within the organization. And I wonder if you could spend a minute talking about, if you have this amazing technology, amazing strategy, amazing whatever, if you don't have really, really clear alignment from the board, C-suite, all the way down to, the most entry-level folks, whatever, if you don't have very, very clear alignment, I would love for you to sort of comment on like why that's the most important, and perhaps what you've maybe done to get, sort of the rank and file bought in to say, here's why we need to do this and what it means to you.
Tim, I have bad news for you then, because I've never ever been able to get alignment. It's usually very, very tough because you have culture and you have politics, right? And the thing is that these
Yes.
things are so ingrained. Like when I think about my time at Vodafone, I was leading global transformation for all 22 opcos globally. And one of the major problems we had is that all of these companies were huge, or these opcos were huge, and all of the departments, they were actually designed to fight against each other, because if you sold more in retail, you would sell less in online, or you sold more in online, you sell less in retail, or sell less in telesales. All of these departments are designed to compete against each other. And the first thing that I tried to do was to fix that and to go to the CEO and say, no, you need to change that. And then every time I would say that, the CEO would be like, that's absolutely right. But then what would happen is when they would try to enact those changes, the head of retail would be like, all right, I'll accept that change. I'll cooperate with online if you ease my sales goals. Or service would say, okay, I'll participate with retail, with in-store retail service if you ease my support KPIs, so that my efficiency KPIs on support. And the thing is, of course, because the CEO reports to the stockholders or the board, and they report to the stockholders, essentially they were like, no, 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 no. These are what we report on. We can't change that. So then what it is, how I end up doing it is sort of understanding what instead of ignoring the politics and ignoring the culture, you have to embrace it. I think one of the interesting things that I witnessed, when you were at Conair, was just how nice everybody was, and how sort of homogenous things seemed, but at the end of the day, a lot of the clients that I have, especially when you're looking at CPGs, larger CPGs and beauty, for instance, where all brands cannibalize each other, right? So it's about saying, how do I horse trade? How do I take their politics internally? And then how do I offer them something? So for instance, using the buy online, pick up in store example with retail was like, when we first proposed it, and this was years ago at Vodafone, retail was like, absolutely not. You're telling me that
Wow.
online is going to sell something, and then I need to use my resources to give the phone to the person. What am I getting for that? Right. So we had to, first of all, change the incentivization strategy to make, so if somebody bought something online, there would be some points that would be given to retail, right? And some other things. And then we also had to say, okay, well, what are your goals? Well, their goals are footfall, which we're increasing just by the sake of doing it. But then the other thing was accessory sales. So, we're like, all right, well, you know what? I
Exactly.
can't give you I can't give you half credit or even, close to a third credit for selling, for doing BOPIS. But what I can do is give you a way to cross and upsell them once they come into your store, which increases footfall and increases your accessory, your high margin accessory sales. Bam, we now had people happy. So it's about always understanding that thing. I had another person who with at call centers who was scared of an AI bot, and why was that? Well, I drilled it down to the fact that he just liked to manage his kingdom. He liked to be important and big. So what I realized was, okay, even though I knew that would move some of his people to other departments, I gave him more of a purview to say, okay, well, since you will do less online chatting and more of it will be automated, how about I give you some content moderation people, and now your empire can be restored. And again, was that the most optimal solution for the problem? No. But for my client, it was. So again, to surmise, it's about always understanding what those limitations or realities are and incorporating them into your strategy.
It's so important because, you can, you wish for a blank slate at some of these big organizations, but you're never going to get it. That just doesn't exist. And you have to, if you think of, we were kids, I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill and all that, you're never going to get the full fat version of the thing that you want to get done because it's going to have to go through the machinations. But if you turn around and look and say, you know what, we're a year into this project or 6 months into this project, and we're way beyond where we were. We might not have hit, the moon, as they say, but we hit the stars. Everybody's got to get their head around. That's a big, big win when you were basically nowhere in some of the subject matter.
Right. Exactly. Also, another point, sorry, like a dog with a squirrel. At one point, what you also have to realize is that I can't tell you how many, let me put it this way. I can't tell you how many times that I go into a client and they have a 2 GB slide deck from some leading management consultancy that is a strategy for them to meet their outcomes. And they're great. I mean, they're amazing experiences. They, amazing, personalizations, amazing omni-channel things. The problem is usually when by the time they engage me, they've tried to implement it, right? And again, you find they don't have the technology, they don't have the APIs because they designed the strategy in a vacuum. And whenever you do that, you don't look at the reality of the situation. Well, sure, that would absolutely work if you were a brand new disruptive company. But as a company that's established doing billions of dollars in trade already, you're just not going to be able to turn the ship that fast. So it's about saying, yes, that's my North Star for 20 years from now. And that will probably change anyway, right? Of course. So it's about what can I do today? And when I say today, that's within the next 6, 8, 12, 24 months to really drive that change and taking into account those things that need to, let's say, be accounted for.
Yeah, it's just so important. I mean, this is just amazing stuff. As you think about, you've led lots of transformation. Talk a little bit about how some of the KPIs have to evolve and how we look at success. I've been privileged to be parts of organizations where, ROAS is their single return on ad spend, is their single North Star. And, a lot of the stuff that's sort of around that gets overlooked. And it's just, there's so many touch points out there to get to one single KPI. It doesn't really do what it probably used to do. And I'm just curious, how have you had success evangelizing the fact that you got to start thinking differently about what success looks like from a phasing, from a horizon perspective and all that?
This is going to sound cliche. It's about being able to own your mistakes or sorry, own your failures, excuse me, right? So when you're outcomes focused like I am, right? So I say, okay, we're going to do a project that is going to make you the number one seller of this product, right, in the marketplace. Great. Okay, so the thing is to get there, like I said, we're going to work down. There's going to be lots of KPIs, and that we're going to constantly work towards whatever they are that are aligned to, getting more people to getting more visibility to your brand and driving brand value. Once people have that, driving people to your site or to partner sites to buy it, right? Then giving them the right information so you get them interested, being able to find those micro levers that you can essentially pull upon at the right time, at the right place, and so forth, right? And all the other things. So there's lots and lots of KPIs. But each project that we do under a program will have a defined set of KPIs. Let's say there's 10 of them, right? So really it comes down to every quarter I stand in front of my clients and I say, look, out of the 10 things that we look to achieve, 7 of them were successful, met or exceeded the KPIs. Great, we're excited. 3 of them completely failed, right? one of, they were failures. Here was our hype, and then explaining here was our hypothesis. Here was what drove our hypothesis, best practice, gold standard, our competition, and here's why we thought it would work. However, you have to say, here's what we learned. In our organization, it didn't work because of this. Our customers don't see us in this. Our clients don't interact in this way. So the point is that it's about, and when you're open about your and you actually then do postmortems, a true postmortem, and be humble enough to accept that,
That's
the
tough.
thing is
That's
that then
tough
you can
stuff right
recalibrate.
there.
That's
Yeah.
right. But the thing is that it's not all the time I come up and say 7 things were successful. And then I can say, even though we had 3 failures, the bottom line is, the investment, had an IRR of whatever. The point is, because sometimes I might say 7 of them fell, but here's what we learned. But this is after you've had some foundational wins so that people know that they can trust you because they've seen you own these things and they're more willing to participate. And again, it's just about having that, it took me a while to get there, to be frank with you. But once I did, and I saw that actually doing that helps in the long run, right? And then gets people to want to work with you because they trust you. That's how you're going to be able to change your KPI. So it becomes building that trust by doing and not and not saying. And it means also to be able to analyze your failures, understand why they failed, and then run more hypotheses and testing to adjust and make those adjustments as needed.
And you've probably failed, as I have, more times than anybody in that room at whatever. I mean, because look, you're making decisions, you're doing things, right? You're gonna fail, and the cheaper, the faster, whatever that you can fail, the quicker, and more money you'll be able to save and sort of invest those in either pivoting out of the stuff that didn't work, adjusting, whatever. But like you and I have probably failed more times at more things than most of the people in whatever rooms we're in. And that to me is such an enormous value because you learn. And you're a humble guy. I mean, like, you say, you know what? The hypothesis, the thought was this. Reality was organization might not have been ready for it. The business might not have been agile or nimble enough to move as directly as we might have otherwise liked it to. Tariffs, inflation, eggs. I mean, all this crazy stuff that's going on right now. I mean, that these are real factors that are very, very fluid. I wonder if you could pivot for a moment into something, that I'm really close to. Google recently, it's been on again, off again. They're going to get rid of cookies. They're not going to get rid of cookies. And as it turns out, they frankly doesn't seem like they're able to do it and really entirely walk away from that. That said, you look at things like Amazon's AMC, which is their clean room product, it's all signal based. Cookies are, sort of a thing of the past. I'm curious your thoughts on the sort of readiness and the preparedness of the digital leadership and the marketing leadership across the industries that you touch. How ready are these folks for what is just crucial? It's becoming table stakes. You mentioned table stakes, BOPUS, and what have you. You really need zero party and first party data more than ever, right? Especially crucial zero party data. I mean, what are your thoughts on the readiness of our industry for what's in the throes right now?
Sure. I mean, look, for the past like 3, 4 years, I don't even know how long it's been. It feels like forever. We've all been dreading the cookieless future, right? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And, I believe that Google delayed it and has been delaying it because they realize it's going to be a huge problem.
Yeah.
All the shopping, a lot of interactions are based on cookies, and you just can't just scrap it. And they tried to give us a long runway, but there was really nothing. There was really, really nothing. However, to be totally frank with you, within the last like 2 months, I have to say that I clearly see the vision for what is the cookieless future. And that comes, okay. So just to back up, I'm not an AI evangelist saying that AI. Like I can't stand that. And everything just puts AI on their name just to say AI. But I do believe that AI is great in supporting functions, not driving
Yes.
them at end to end, and supporting what needs to happen.
So it's an
In this
accelerant, in
case,
other words, is how you're thinking of it.
yeah, correct. Yeah. But when I look at now with AI and its capability to process mass amounts of data and do, reasoning, and now agentic AI, essentially, if you have just a little bit of zero party data that you've just gotten, or even first party data, you can have an AI engine that can go out and build a profile of that person on the internet in milliseconds as they're shopping. So actually, you can get, I believe, more richer profiles of people than just what you have. Because right now a cookie goes to a profile. That profile has specific attributes that are hard coded to whatever the system essentially has been coded to do, right? Now with AI, you have complete flexibility. You realize, okay, I now know this is Jared Slomack. I can now search, get all this information, I know where he works, I know what he does. I can find a blog post that, a letter he wrote to the SEC, when he was like 17 years old, so I know that he's been involved in this since, investing since whenever, and And then it can then use that to then create a completely unique profile that has attributes that other people might not have, that then it can assign to other products that I'm looking at to essentially drive, or even experiences. Let's say it realize I'm a value shopper and not a
Early
uh,
adopter, for
uh,
instance.
uh, correct, and not a right, exactly, and not an early adapter shopper. It's just an example. And the thing is that then it's going to start showing more statistics and things because it sees my history. So I believe that the future actually is going to be really exciting. I'm just getting my first projects in this area right now because it's been proven. People have seen people shop through agentic AI on OpenAI, on ChatGPT and OpenAI. I mean, it's really incredible. So I believe that's the future. What it's going to look like, who knows? I mean, we're really early days in this, in seeing it actually work, let alone what it's going to evolve to. And I believe that's where we're going to go. Yeah.
No, look, that's fascinating. I'm in the same camp. I'm not seeing some, horrible dystopian future. I just don't see that. I mean, yeah, it's going to move unbelievably quickly over the next couple, 3 years, but I think the doors that it's going to open and the way through some things like cookies and whatever, it's going to innovate things that no one's even thought to do before, like shopping through chat or Claude or whatever. That's wild. I'm really happy to hear you say that. Look, the world out there is coming around to the fact that it's not just going to be look at even Google, right? Like, they're prioritizing heavily their Gemini, results, like AIO they call it. They're prioritizing that very, very heavily. That's radically moving around how you would have to SEO a website. You think it's something like Reddit. Reddit has been around for a long time, but like, wow, if you are a marketer today and you're not in some capacity participating in Reddit, whether it's, quietly sponsoring or fostering a community there, if not for, firsthand or at least at arm's length, things like this, it's stuff that's been swirling under the surface for a while, but some of these things are going to get so big so quickly. I think to wrap things up, it sounds like you're optimistic, about the future of obviously of our space, but it sounds like you're seeing some organizations who, while they probably realize that this irrational exuberance in some of these subjects is probably a little unwarranted, they're realizing, there are tangible things we can do, and that they're going to have to reorganize themselves to support that.
Right, exactly. And to be frank with you, what I think is really great about all of this is we ran through the AI hype cycle pretty quickly. I think that a lot of companies jumped in. It was very different than AR. A lot of companies jumped in, they made some bets that many of them didn't pay off because they just bought the hype. However, there was enough of a demonstrable value of AI across personal life and business life and professional life, et cetera, I think had shown a lot of people, okay, this didn't work. I got caught up in the hype cycle, but what does work now? Like, what can I do? And again, it's taking it from just looking at it the reverse way, is saying, what problems do I need to solve for? And then, saying, okay, well, here, or what goals do I need to attain? And then it's about saying, all right, then what's that strategy? And how does AI fit into that strategy? Not what is my AI product that's going to do that. I think that this is all really great. Especially when you look at, like headless commerce and so forth, where we've essentially, compartmentalized, content and a lot of personalization and profiles and so forth. I think that's going to play into the hands of successful AI implementations, because that's exactly what it needs. You still need to have data. You still need to have technology powering it. The data still needs to be cleaned and well maintained
That's
so
the
you don't have
biggest thing. You
hallucinations and
just
so
said it
forth.
right
Yeah.
there. And I was at an event recently, and somebody said the current state of data in most companies looks like Penn Station. I mean, which is not a compliment for those that aren't familiar with Penn Station. Like a lot of data is just all over the place, and it's exciting. There's a lot of companies out there that are out there building picks and shovels to basically go clean this
Yep.
stuff up. Sort of in
Right.
advance of, all right, how are we going to go mechanize it across our business?
Well, it's funny that you bring that up, Tim, because a lot of people say, "Great, well now AI is here. I don't have to worry about that anymore." But actually, you have to worry about it even more. AI does not clean data, and any product that they say that does is not very good at it. I mean, there's definitely supporting AI products that will scan your data, but you'll still need a human to work together with it to then say to explain to it, well, this means this, or this is actually good, or this is bad, and so forth. So there's another great example. But again, that I think is going to be one of the even I thought personalization, especially as Adobe evolved, Adobe Experience
Yeah,
Manager and so forth.
Firefly and all that. Yeah,
I expected people, right, exactly, all those things. I expected, and Hybriss's capabilities and all these other things. I expected people, years ago to really say, great, data is now going to be our number one priority. But the problem that they had is that, yes, they could clean it, but as soon as they clean it, the ways that it got the processes and the methodologies that got it dirty to begin with are still running. Like you have to fix those
yeah,
things too. I think now
yeah.
every CIO and CTO understands that. And I think now but it's not a sexy thing to sell, right? It's really hard to say
No,
all these,
that's the
you have,
tough stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
But now when they say, hey, we want AI, it's a very easy explanation to say, okay, I can give you AI, but if I put in bad data, you're going to get bad data out. Just think about how when you use ChatGPT, it hallucinated on something you asked it to do, like which it does to me all the time. Can you imagine that on a corporate scale? Then they understand it. It becomes very clear what they have to do. And then you can say, okay, well, we not only have to clean the data, we need to clean these processes. And I think there's going to be I see already there's a big drive within my clients to do these things.
Look, that's great to hear. Honestly, it really, really is great to hear because it sounds like it's getting across the industry. You know what? It's not just a button you press. I mean, there's a lot of still human effort that has to go into preparing everything and getting everything sort of sanitized and organized, as it were. Well, look, this was
Right.
awesome. Jared, I'm so grateful for your time. Please check out Jared Slomack on LinkedIn and BairesDev. And I really, really appreciate your time and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tim. It was a pleasure. Have a wonderful day. Bye.